Welcome back. In this video, we're going to add the floating action button that you can see right here at the bottom to our application. So as we've seen, currently we don't have it yet. So our wish list currently just has nothing here at the bottom. That's what we want to change. So how do we now add such an action button? Well, a floating action button. It's floating there at the bottom. It's really on top of whatever content is underneath it. So therefore, let's go over to our home view because that's where we are. Well, we have that button which we want to use in order to add items. So here, this scaffold, it has another property that we can use, and that is the floating action button. And that comes after this app bar, which should be finishing here. All right. So that's where it ends. And then we can go and add a floating action button. So this one right here. And we can now define what we want to have as the floating action button parameter. Now we could go ahead and create a separate file for that, but we're just going to use the default floating action button composable. So this composable has an on-click event, but then there are some other things that we can modify. So what we're going to do for now is we're going to do nothing. So here, add navigation to edit screen or to the add screen. Okay, so that's what we will need to do. And actually it helps if you have the to do keyword here, to do add navigation to add screen. So this floating action button has a property here as always, which is the modifier. So I'm going to say modifier dot padding. So I want to have a little bit of padding towards all directions for that floating action button of 20 density pixels. And we need to import dp, and we mustn't forget the comma here. And then we also need to make sure that this comment is not breaking our on click. Okay, otherwise we get this error. So what else do I want to add? Well, the thing is, you can change the content color, and I'm just gonna say the content color should be white. So my floating action button's content, so the plus sign should be white. So I'm going to use color.white for that, and the background color I will use color.black. And then as the icon for my floating action icon, I want to use, and it's not this icon, let me see. So here I'm going to use icon, the one with the image vector. Okay, this one. I'm going to set the image vector to be icons.default.add. So this plus that you can see here. You can also use add circle or whatever you prefer. I'm just going to use the add one, and the content description I'm just going to set to null. You could obviously add something like add button or something like that to the content description. So that will be our floating action button. So let's run our application and see if the floating action button actually exists and if it wants to display. So there we are. There's our floating action button, and you see it's this white plus inside of this black button. Now, obviously it doesn't do anything as of now. We can change that. We can use a toast here, like same thing that we used before. I'm just going to put the toast inside of this on click here. I'm gonna say floating action button. So the FAB button clicked. Let's rerun this and see if it's going to work. So I just copied the code from up here, where I just use the context and so forth to make this button clickable. You see FAB button clicked. So now we know that this button works, and now we can go over to the next step where we navigate to a different screen. Now, well, before we actually navigate to a different screen, we need to set up that screen. All right. So yeah, let's do one after the other. See you in the next video.